Hello, and welcome to the Opening Portal Show with me, Nigel Hoffman, and my little friend here, E.T. Just like to welcome you to the show, which will be going out live every Sunday evening between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. UK time. And this week, it will normally be a live show, but this week we're doing a pre-recorded show just to test the equipment and make sure everything's okay. I hope you'll join us each week. We'll be looking at all sorts of subjects to UFOs, portals, dimensions, and this will be a good insight. Hopefully get some speakers on that will be joining me as guests from the New Ufology Conference, give you a little bit of insight into what they'll be talking about at the conference next year. So, without any further ado, it's goodbye from me and E.T. I was walking down by the River Wharf from Ilkley Town Centre. I just passed the Ilkley Church, which is a very ancient site in the town, and this takes you down to the River Wharf, another ancient river in the area. Now I set off down there and ended up walking in a easterly direction towards a place called Denton, which is just sort of north of Ilkley. It's quite a well-known place because the hall there was actually used in the film The Water Babies, so it's quite imposing in the landscape. But I'd heard that within the grounds of this hall there was a wooded area, and somebody had actually seen, they claimed, a UFO landing in the woods there. So on this particular evening back in 1983 I decided to set off after work. I used to work in the area, funnily enough, at a place called Middleton Hospital. I set off and was walking, had no transport at that time, walked about a quarter of a mile on the side of the riverbank. There's a small road that was only about the width of one car, and I started sort of like jogging along there because I wanted to get to the actual site to take some photographs of where this object was supposed to have landed before it got dark. So I started jogging down there, and I'd say I've been, going in that direction for about 10 minutes, and it was starting to be getting a little bit dusk. I could see that there were like midges flying over the top of the water on the river, and the sunlight had sort of dropped over the horizon. As I got sort of about halfway towards Denton, suddenly I saw this figure sat on a fishing store, and at first I took no notice because I thought, well, it's probably just somebody fishing by the side of the river, which was a popular pastime, and you would see other people fishing there, usually at that time. Anyway, as I got closer to it, though, I could see it wasn't anything like that. It was a very small figure. I'd only put him about 3.5 feet tall. Sat on. It sounds totally ridiculous, but this is what I saw. He looked totally physical. He had a small hat. He looked exactly dressed like Men in Black in America, but very small. With a black sort of pork pie hat on, with a black suit, white shirt, black tie. Looked like one of the Blues Brothers in a way. Anyway, I got to the. So as I approached this small figure that was sat on this, it looked like a really cheap fishing stall. He looked, immaculately dressed, yet he's there on this very small stall. And then as I got alongside of him, basically, I quickened up my pace at this point because I thought this is something started to come over my mind that this is very odd. It's not a normal scene. And just to the right of him, just parked by some bushes that I'd already passed, I sort of looked back at him and I saw this was a big black limousine, a big black car. I don't know, it looked like a Zephyr or something like that. It looked a bit old, back from the 60s sort of thing. It had, I remember definitely had the white rim around the wheels, like a white line, should I say, around the wheels, and it looked immaculate. It looked like it just come out of a showroom, but it looked an older type of model than what was currently available around that time. So the first thoughts that flashed through my head was that I'm going to get taken here or something's going to happen. And as I looked at him, he looked up at me and everything went into slow motion. It was just like time sort of were in stages. I was watching everything move, but then the next part of his face looking up at me, sort of for a second later, it was in like 4 or 5 different stages. And he sort of had this, all I can say is like a menacing grin on his face, as if he was like, not laughing at me, but just a really weird grin. A big, like the Joker of Batman, that type of thing, you know, a massive sort of mouth, but exaggerated, and he stared at me. Anyway, I just went past him by about, say, about 6 or 7 yards, and then looked back, and there was nothing there. It was completely gone. What I'd seen seconds before was no longer there. Hence to say, I was so scared at that point that I didn't carry on to investigate the case at Denton by the woods. Turned straight back round and actually ran past where he'd been. Never looked. I remember sort of like closing my eyes a little bit as I ran. Ran all along that road, never stopped once, and it's like I say, I probably covered a quarter of a mile. Went through the park at Ilkley by the old church, and the flat where I was living with my ex-wife at that time was overlooked the actual park, the fields of the parks by the River Wharf. So I actually ran upstairs, locked the door, and I remember all that evening really uncomfortable, thinking, you know, I just felt that this thing probably were following me. Maybe it were going to try and get into the flat. I don't know. Nothing ever happened after that, but that was one encounter I definitely had. I've had two encounters with the MIB in my life. The other one I'm talk about shortly, but that was something very, very unusual. And what I found is that other people have cited it. There was a lady called Jan who had actually encountered MIB in the same area of Ilkley. It's strange. But it seemed to be when I was really investigating the area that this came about, and I think that's significant, I really do. Come on, guys, get yourself to the new ufology conference. Next July the 22nd, 2017, in High Bentham, Lancaster. Hope you'll see you there. Okay, another tale from the crypt, so to speak, from 30 odd years ago. This one, although it might be an MIB, I never really thought about it in that way, but it's very quick. This, I mean, I'm just going to go over it quickly because of the time limit on the program. But this was when I was investigating with the West Yorkshire UFO Research Group, and I remember there was myself, a guy called Peter Cliff Senior. He had a son called Peter Cliff as well. Peter Cliff Senior from Leeds. I think it was Martin Douglas, who was an investigator with us at that time. This would be about 1984, around that period. And we was up at a place called Chelka Reservoir. It's a big water mass that's just above Addingham, near Ilkley in West Yorkshire, where I lived at that time. And we'd been up there to do a sky watch. We decided it'd be a good area because people had seen orange balls of light over the water. There had been a couple of cases there, so we decided to go up there and do the sky watch. On this particular evening, we'd gone up in, I think it was Peter's car. There was four of us. I can't remember who the other two were. The other one was really. I was the fourth passenger. That's right. But anyway, we got up there, and a guy called Steve Hart was with us. Yeah, from Leeds. He was there as well. We got up to the actual spot. It's a little lay-by the side of the reservoir, and this reservoir, I'd say, is probably about I'd say it's about a third of a mile long, and less than that across. You know, it's not one of the biggest ones in Yorkshire, but it's quite a big mass of water and feeds quite an area in the Wharf Valley. But anyway, we sat there, and as we got to the spot, Peter sort of said, "Oh heck!" Looked at his dashboard, and his red oil light had come on. So he thought, "I wonder what." So we started the engine up, and it was okay. The light went off, and everything was fine. The car seemed to tick over okay, and he forgot about it basically. He said, "Oh, I'll sort this out later on." So we did the sky watch. We'd been there for about, say, half an hour, not much more than that, and we were all at different spots along the bank of the water at the reservoir. And all of a sudden, Steve shouted out to Martin or whatever, and I heard this. I sort of walked over towards him, and he said, "There's a car pulling up just up ahead of us." Now we just thought it probably somebody pulling up to find out what we were doing, basically. But then all of a sudden, this chap gets out of it. He looked quite slim built. He had ordinary clothes on. He just looked like he had I think at the time he had a jacket on and trousers. Didn't look like your typical MIB at all, just looked like an ordinary person. But he seemed to move really quick. This is what we all thought was odd. He came towards us, moving quickly. Almost walking, but it's almost like power walking, that type of way you'd look at it today. And he came up to Peter and just gave him a half pint, or half litre it would be, bottle, plastic bottle of oil for the car. And then Peter looked at him amazed, put it into his hand, turned round, never said a word to him, walked straight back, got in the car and drove off. And we just looked dumbfounded. We know that Peter hadn't rang anybody. We didn't know who this person was. Nobody knew who it was. It was just unbelievable. But I've heard that things like this have happened before. I mean, some people have put it down to lots of things. Because we were having a UFO skywatch, we put it down to being some sort of like being that maybe had helped us or whatever. We don't know. It could have just been an ordinary person who was intuitive and had a feeling what was wrong with the car. I don't know. It was really odd, but he did turn up. I mean, some people out there might say, well, it was an angel, that was helping us. But what was strange was that car did need the oil, because Peter, on his way back to Leeds, the light came on again and he had to top it up with the oil. So it's a good job it did turn up. Portal evidence from historic, present and futuristic analysis. UFO secret of the settled sundial, a portal in reality. Another experience that happened at Choker Reservoir was about 1989. I know it was in the summer of that month because it was when I was going through quite a hard divorce with my first wife, and I was at a loss. I'm so used to the normal routine of family life that everything seemed to be, just didn't know what to do with myself. And even though, I don't know, parts of me, I knew that psychic abilities existed and things, but I never really went to any psychics or to any fairs like that before this particular day. And I just found myself going to Keighley. I'd heard about this psychic fair that was on, and queuing up there. It was held in the Victoria pub in Keighley, and queuing up there, and the lady came across to me and said, I'd never met her before in my life. She just came across to me and said, the books that you're writing on UFOs, you need to do them, you need to get them done. And I found this intriguing because I'd just started writing a book on the orange balls of light around the Oakley area. And I thought, how does she know about this? I've not told anybody about it before. So I got to know this lady, got chatting with her and things, and she explained a few things to me, but it seemed that the level she was on, which was quite unusual back then in 1989, was one that she was an obvious contactee, an experiencer. And this type of thing she was telling me about the different type of beings that she'd been in touch with. She lived in America, and it was different. It was different to what we were encountering here in this country. So she said to me out of the blue, she said, well, I'm going over Addingham Way, I'll give you a lift home. So I took her up on this, and she was a nice person. I sort of trusted her in that. I thought, that's great. Anyway, to cut a long story short, on the way back, because I was still living with my ex-wife at that time and my two children at the house, instead of turning right into the drive at Addingham where we lived, she turned left and went up the hill towards Choker Reservoir that I've just mentioned in the other part of the show. And this lady, her name was Helyu. She was, I think she was Ukrainian descent and was living in this country now. But she, a little mini car, and she pulled up right at the edge of Choker Reservoir in this little lay-by that's by the side of the road. And it's a busy road. It's the A65 all the way to Skipton from Ilkley. So there's quite a few cars passed by on that, but it was early evening and dusk was just sort of coming in, I think. And then all of a sudden she just turned to me and said, look at my face. So I watched, and it was almost, again, you always get this, I've mentioned it a few times already in the show, it's almost like time slows down and everything. I don't know whether that's the shock of what happens or whether it's your mind trying to appreciate what's going off. But all I can say is it was transmogrification, but what I saw there was amazing, and I'll never forget it to this day. We get types of greys, the typical one of the small greys that's the bluey grey colour, that people mostly see in abductions, but this being that overlaid her face was what I would call a golden grey. There was an immense and magnificent golden light that appeared within the car. It lit the whole car up inside, literally, but just coming from her face. It was amazing. If anybody's watched the film Cocoon, or Return Cocoon, you'll see that sort of like eminence coming from the beams. It really was just like that. And I could tell it was grey. It had black eyes, but it was golden in colour around the top of its head particularly. But all of a sudden I saw, and this shocked me, it did make me scared, for a second or two, was its lips were just like a slip, but they were like quivering, as if they were speaking really fast, sort of like, I'll try and do it, but like that, really, really fast, but there were no words coming out, I could hear nothing, I could just sort of see these lips that were on her lips, sort of going up and down. Anyway, she said, they've got a message for you, but you're not ready for it yet. And when she said them words, not ready for you yet, it all disappeared. It just went back to normal. And she just sort of looked like she'd been a little bit exhausted. She had her eyes closed for 2 or 3 seconds afterwards and then never spoke a word to me. It was almost like I couldn't ask her anything about it. Really odd. And she took me back home, back down to where I lived. And I saw this lady quite a few times after that. And she on various occasions tried to bring through this being to me, but many times we'd get to near the point of where she said you're nearly going to make contact with it, but you just, there's something about you that's not ready yet. I understand now what that was. I mean, years later I started channeling the things myself, and I know what has to happen within your body to be able to do that. But at that time it was an early encounter, but amazing in itself, that even at those early stages back in the sort of late 80s, these beings were trying to make contact at particular places. There are places that I now believe are portals, and it's where certain human beings like that lady actually know where they are. They're told where they are, and I'll never forget that experience. UFOs, Portals and Gateways by Nigel Mortimer. New Ufology in one book. It was around the time that I was investigating the Cracoe Fell UFO case. I think that must have been around 1981 then, or possibly 82, I don't know. It was around that time, early 80s, that I used to travel quite a lot to Grassington from Addingham in West Yorkshire. Grassington is in the Yorkshire Dales, a lovely sort of little town. There have been a lot of UFO sightings there over the years. Tony Dodd, who was the police sergeant that investigated for the Yorkshire UFO Society around that time, Sergeant Tony Dodd, who's sadly now deceased. I used to go over there quite a lot to actually compare notes with him on UFOs and things. And Tony was a good dowser. I used to I used to tell him about my own dowsing abilities and things. Now the thing is that there was a lot of activity close to the time that the Cracoe Fell photograph actually came out into the press. As we all know now, the Cracoe image was a misidentification, but there were lots of sightings of and photographs taken of orange balls of light nearby Appletree Wick. Is quite a famous one where there's a ball of light there that's seen just behind a tree by some Morris dancers. That was around 1983. Now, a lot of campers in the area used to see UFOs and balls of light that would meander through the valley. And I used to go over there, as I say, because of that. Now, one of the places that I used to pass as I was going into North Yorkshire to look at these areas, on the other road, opposite the Grassington Road from Skipton, takes you up to a place called Long Preston, and that's going up towards, funnily enough, years later, Settle, where the portal is. And at Long Preston, there's an area of road that follows the railway track that runs between Skipton and Carlisle, and there have been a few UFO sightings made by train drivers on that particular piece of track as well over the years. But on this one occasion, I remember I was on my little Gilera 50 motorbike, moped really back then, and I remember riding up, you're going in northerly direction on this road, and I spotted like a misty patch in the road ahead of me. And as I was watching this, my bike started to. It's a typical thing that you read about with the EM effects and that in ufology. The bike started to splutter and misfire. Yeah, it'd been perfect on the journey all the way there. And as I get towards this mist, which had a sort of a green tinge to it, I won't say it was green, but it definitely had like a green sort of tinge that came from the surrounding countryside that was sort of being magnified in the mist. As I got towards there, the bike came to a stop completely. So I got off the bike, put it at the side of the road. There were no more traffic about. It was all very quiet. This would be a thing that I would imagine what Jane Randalls would have called back then the Oz factor, where you're going from one reality into another, not really realising it yourself, but you're always being conditioned to encounter something strange. And my bike just wouldn't start. I tried everything. I took the spark plug out. I cleaned it. I looked at the points. I knew a little bit about mechanics on bikes and were able to look after my own bike at that time. But there was nothing that I could just. I had fuel in the tank. I thought, what is wrong? There's nothing. No reason why this bike shouldn't start. Anyway, I pushed it to the side, and just by the wall, I looked down the track. The field runs down towards the railway line, and there's a little house there. Now this house looks out of character. It looks like something that, again, that should have been there built in the 1600s. It certainly didn't look, Victorian or anything modern since then. It looked really old. And I thought, well, what can I do? So I thought, well, the best thing I can do really is to try and ask if they've got a phone there. And this was, remember, the days before mobile phones, and see if I can get some sort of help with the bike. Started walking down towards the door. The door opened, and a little old lady came to the door. I'm not going to say she looked like a witch or a crone or anything, but she did look a little unusual. She had dark, straggly hair. She looked like she hadn't been, washed for years. She looked sort of musty and that type of thing. But anyway, she seemed pleasant enough. She said to me, "Can I, can I help you come inside?" And I explained what had happened and everything. And there was a cup of tea actually on the table. She had one, and there was one as if she had a guest there. And I thought, oh, there must be somebody else in the house with her. She said, "Get your tea," like that to me. And I thought to myself, she knew I was coming. She knew this was going to happen. And you could tell it had just been poured, the tea, it was hot. And I thought, well, maybe she's seen me out of the window or something, or, do you know what I mean? I thought, well, how does she even know if I liked it? It was really odd. I was thinking all these things over and over again. Anyway, she had no phone, so that was a pointless thing. And she sat down at the table to me, and next to me, and she just kept smiling at me and saying, "You'll be okay. You'll be okay. Don't worry. You'll be okay." And I thought, this is odd. She's not, I was saying things to her like, "Do you think there's a garage anywhere near here that I can get some?" She didn't answer me. She just kept saying, "You'll be okay." And after a short while, she said, "Well, you better be on your way now, hadn't you? I think, you know, you'll get some help. You'll be cars coming by soon, and that you better get it sorted." Anyway, I thought, well, I'm not going to get any help here. I need to sort of do something, maybe push the bike to the next town or whatever. And got back to the bike. Thought, like you do, you always do. Bikers will know this. You think, oh, give it another go. Give it a go. Straight away, the engine fired up. Absolutely perfect again, nothing wrong with it. But what's even stranger, and I've read accounts, and you might have done, since this happened to me, was that I drove off. I got to the next place is Settle, where years later you know what happened there. Got to Settle, went to a garage, and had got some more petrol for it. That's what I thought. I thought I better fill up and make sure it's not that, but it was okay. So I went, turned round. I think I had something to eat there. Stopped there for about an hour or so. All the mist and everything had gone off the road. That disappeared. Went back. The house wasn't there. I looked. I slowed down where it all happened, and this would be on my right hand side this time, looking down to the track. I looked all along that road, and it was a perfectly clear view. There was no house there, and there still hasn't ever been a house there. Every time I've looked ever since, it was almost like a ghost house, and I don't know who the old lady was, but very unusual again, very strange, in a place where there's high UFO activity. So, these things do happen. Again, I'm glad I was witness to it, but when these things do happen to you at the time, they're very unnerving. It doesn't matter whether you've been used to it or not. You know, they are very, very strange. One of the encounters, well, I say encounter experiences really, that did take place, goes back to the days before one of my good friends at that time, Paul Bennett, decided to join forces with Andy Roberts and David Clark. And it's only a couple of years ago actually did a very nasty personal attack on me and my family, for no good reason whatsoever. But anyway, by the by, back in those days, Paul Bennett was a different character. Today he denies that I have any psychic ability, that he actually states that I made up that I channel with Charlotte to him, which I have never done. And I wonder why that is, I wonder why he's suddenly started to say that. But proof is in the pudding, and luckily enough, because I actually recorded everything as it happened back then in books and other media, tape recordings and things, Paul Bennett would not be able to deny a psychic experience that he was actually involved in with me back in 1989. I'd had a series of dreams, and this was closely after the time where I worked with Paul on the Backstone Circle, where I channeled information to relocate a lost stone circle on Ilkley Moor. But I started having other dreams about other stones in the area, which is really odd. It's almost like these standing stones was actually speaking to certain people in the area, as if they wanted to be discovered. I think I know why now. Again, I keep saying it's because it's good to look back in hindsight, and you see that it may have been because the portal areas and the beings that operate them or work within them are trying to call out to you rather than the actual stone itself. Or they may be using the stone, the crystalline structure of the stone, to magnify on a psychic level thoughts and impressions. On this occasion, I got this impression that there was a standing stone, quite a tall one, I'd say about 8 foot tall, quite broad, about 3 foot across. So quite an impressive stone that once stood on the moorlands that overlooked Skipton in North Yorkshire. And in this dream I could see myself looking at the stone. It was on a slope in the field that went down to a marshy area at the bottom, and then there was the main road going into Skipton. Now I recognised the area in my dream, but I also knew, as did Paul Bennett, there was no standing stone there. But anyway, both Paul and myself started to do a little bit of research, and Paul came up with the fact that in this very field that I pointed out to him, in physical reality, we went to visit the field later, but in this particular field on the map, there was a stone called the Thief Thorn, as in a thief that steals things. And thorn, as most people will know, was an ancient local name for anything that looks pointed, basically like a standing stone. That would be a thorn stone. So the Thief Thorn was a very real standing stone. Also, I kept getting that there were initials at the base of this stone for some reason, carved. I think it was either DM or DJ, and I wondered what they were. I kept seeing them in the dream, and I told Paul all about this. We wrote it down, and one thing and another, led to us actually going to the actual site. Now I remember going with Paul, and we got to the field, and there was such a disappointment because we couldn't see any standing stone in it whatsoever from the roadside itself, and we're only talking a matter of metres to where I thought this place should be. But what we did see, which got our hopes up quite high, was I said, that's the marshland at the bottom of the slope. I definitely saw all that. That's what it looked like even in the dream. But I think I was seeing back in time when the stone was stood up. So we went to the area in the field where I thought it should be, and there was a little sort of council drain slab on the floor, and I thought, well, that's there. Maybe they moved it. Maybe they put that there and left that there. Moved the stone and put that there. But it wasn't long. There was a little patch of grass, and I would say only about a foot across. There looked to be a flat piece of stone, old, ancient, boulder type stone. So Paul, because he's really, I don't care what he said about me, he's really good at picking up on his knowledge of archaeology, local archaeology in the area is second to none. He really knows his stuff. Now Paul started to scrape away at the grass turf around us, 1 foot area exposed stone, and I'm not kidding, within about 20 minutes I joined in with him. I was so excited. He'd revealed, and here's the photograph, you'll see it on this video in a minute, of him lying down next to it. He revealed this large standing stone that had actually was still there but had become recumbent, had fallen over and was now sinking into the ground with its weight. And what's even more impressive is at the base of the stone were the carved letters. The story of the thief fawn is that a local man, you can look up in books about this in the Skipton Library, there are reference books to it, but this local man who was worried about his family and looking after them and one thing and another, stole some money and actually took it to the stone and buried it underneath it. Well, you can imagine me and Paul are there trying to locate this, but there's nothing else there. And it is said that he was actually hung at the stone side, so again, it may have some sort of mystery to it behind it there, but the standing stone is there. I think it goes way back before that actual story. I think it is an ancient and quite prolific standing stone in the area, which again shows that site is very connected to the other strange and phenomenon that takes place there. But without a shadow of a doubt, Paul Bennett can say what he likes, but through psychic awareness on my part, through psychic dreaming and mapped out, saying one thing and another, Paul was witness and actually revealed himself that standing stone. I hope you've enjoyed some of those personal encounters with things over the last few years. Couple of decades really. Yeah. But I mean, there are many more that I could write volumes about, to be honest with you, but it's just good to recollect sometimes, over these things and reevaluate them to see what they mean in hindsight, really, because I'm sure most of these experiences that do happen to people have a meaning behind them. They don't just happen randomly. I'm pretty sure when you understand the nature of reality that everything has a bearing on something else. So, the cause and effect thing does come into play. There are many others, like I say, many other experiences, like the ball of light that appeared over a minibus full of nurses that I was actually travelling on back in the early 1980s from Middleton Hospital. Sadly, the hospital is no longer there, but this was in Ilkley in West Yorkshire, Middleton, a little village next to some woodlands. Very strange encounters in those woodlands. Also, this ball of light that the nurses saw, there was probably a dozen nurses that were travelling down into the town of Ilkley from the hospital. They all saw out of the window above the church in Ilkley a football-sized orange ball of light. I saw that myself. It did a zigzag at about 1,000 feet. So this object must be quite big and disappeared from view. There have been numerous sightings in the Ilkley and Addingham area. 1983, I remember a lady called, I'll just say her first name, Jane, who actually saw a rugby-shaped UFO that hovered over a mast, a TV mast in the area of Addingham. All the TVs in the village all cut off at that time when it happened. I investigated it for the Northern UFO News with Jenny Randalls back then, and that was quite a classic case of EM effects on the environment. Just trying to go through all of these things. I mean, one of the things that's quite interesting as well, which I don't really go into a lot of detail with, maybe it's something I can work on in the future, is when I had my own personal orange ball of light encounter back in November 1980, how that really ties in with all the major events that took place, because 1980 was quite a quiet year for UFO sightings overall, but compressed into sort of that late autumn into the early months of the winter in 1980, there was a lot of UFO encounters that took place that were very strange. December 1980 we have the Rendlesham Forest encounter. There were encounters around Menwith Hill in the same year. There'd been the Todmorden Adamski affair in 1980. I believe the Travis Walton case was was that around 1980 or previous to that? I can't remember. But there were a lot of strange encounters taking place that are quite notable today from around that period. So, I do think something very, very unusual was happening and significant. When the history books write this all up, they'll see that that late period in 1980 was very important. I do believe there was some sort of contact made somewhere at one of these bases. It may be that the story about what happened at Rendlesham is correct. Just need people to be a bit more honest there. Mr. Holt and one or two others that in future will actually realise that humanity deserves to know the truth about what happens when these experiences and these encounters take place at such a close level. Okay, well, I'm going to round that up now. The show this week, I'm sadly to say, is pre-recorded, but we're hoping to go live next week, and if I can work it out, I've got all the conference to sort out at the moment. We try and get a guest on, and that'll make it a little bit more interesting than me rambling on. But I hope you've enjoyed it this week. I certainly have. It's great to be back on the air again. I apologise for looking a little bit under the weather. I've come down with some sort of allergy, or I thought it was hay fever. I think it's something a little bit more than that. But I feel okay, getting there, and looking forward to hearing your comments on the show. Okay. Bye for now.